Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to Scotland versus the All Blacks. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and here to give you my views on the game. And what a cracker it was. One of the closest that Scotland has come to beating the All Blacks. Let's be honest, at least in my memory. Anyway, they did show or talk about a draw earlier on, but hey, I say that's the closest I can remember them coming, and it was a wonderful game. Early doors, Scotland had the upper hand and got an early penalty to take a 3-point lead. And for the first quarter of an hour, they had the upper hand, but weren't coming away with any more points. They did miss a penalty as well. And there was a feeling at that point, or I had the feeling at that point, that as soon as the All Blacks caught the ball and had an attack, they were going to come away with a try. That didn't happen though. Scotland was showing some real good line speed and were definitely playing defensively, especially, very well. Attacking, both sides were struggling to break the gain line, and that meant you weren't getting many phases and much go forward. So there were quite a lot of turnovers in that first half, and that continued in the second half as well. And there were also quite a few penalties. A lot of those came actually in the second half. One of the things I found interesting was when New Zealand did get closer to the line, when we saw them against France, was a lot of passing the ball out, and then the forward doing a quick shuffling the ball on to a second player to make that bash towards the line. We weren't seeing that this week from the All Blacks. So clearly the different tactics against different teams in that case. There were much more pick and goes or just going to that one out man. There wasn't that second pass out to somebody else that we were seeing. So interesting to see that change of tactics from the All Blacks there. Scotland did make sure they were playing in the right half of the pitch, and they were quite happy to kick the ball into the All Blacks 22 and give them a line out there. And the Scotland line out was very strong. In fact, both line outs were pretty strong. I think the All Blacks lost one line out, and Scotland didn't lose any. So there was definitely Scotland were definitely interested in playing the game in the All Blacks territory, making them go a long way to score. I did feel actually Scotland did play a lot of it felt like Scotland had most of the territory and possession in that first half. When you look at the stats, it was 50-50, and so it felt that way, and it felt that Scotland should have come away with more points. Perhaps that was fair, and they were lucky in some ways because they did compound their own errors occasionally. At one point, the All Blacks had a 5-metre scrum on their own line. Scotland gave up a penalty. It was kicked downfield, and soon, not long later, 2 more errors, and suddenly Scotland were defending a 5-metre scrum on their own line. That one, even though the ball came back on the All Blacks side, Scotland got the ball and so managed to relieve the pressure. And it did show this was going to be a real game, as on 37 minutes, New Zealand, when they got a penalty opportunity, they didn't go for the corner. They actually kicked sticks, which is very rare for them, unless they think a game has got serious and they're in a chance of losing. So it was 3-3 at half time, and some of the interesting things there was, I say, the gain line had been hard for both sides. On the tackling side, you had New Zealand had made 72, had attempted 72 and made 64, had an 89% rate, whereas Scotland had attempted 51 tackles but made only 36, so 69% rate. Now, part of that was that rush defence, the idea that if you get up in their face and get a quick tackle in and slow the player down, that the next player can come in. And so it's not so important they actually make the tackle as you just attempt to tackle and try and get in their face to slow things down. But that theme carried on throughout the game. And Scotland, in the end, only actually had to make 65 tackles. Well, sorry, 69 tackles. It's just updated on. Oh, sorry, 65 tackles. That's right. Sorry, which means they only were asked to make another from 51 up to 65. So what's that? Another 14 tackles in the second half. They really did dominate from possession, but they only made 45 of those tackles. They still stuck at 69%. The All Blacks had to make an amazing 157 tackles, making 138 of them, or an 88% mark. They really did not miss very many at all. Also, the fact that their scrum was on top was a big bonus. I mean, New Zealand won all their scrums, 10 out of 10. Scotland, it says, won 3 out of 5. That doesn't count on the ones that just went to free kicks or penalties. So I think, yeah, there was Scotland would definitely have on the back foot when it came to scrum time. So it was only 3-3 at half-time, and yet we ended up with a score of 17-22. So we had, yes, a lot of tries in the second half. Even though they had that possession, and Scotland did have the slight up on territories in that first half, we ended up having 15 turnovers to New Zealand's 9 turnovers. Quite a lot of those turnovers from Scotland were in that first half, and that really did stifle them, which meant they actually had slightly less possession than New Zealand, even though they had better territory. In the second half, though, Scotland had 74% possession, 77% territory. They really were dominating where the game was being played. The problem was they were playing the All Blacks, and the All Blacks are one of the most clinical sides in rugby, in world rugby, and hence that's why they came away and scored 3 tries, even though they only had 25% of the possession, only 21% of the territory. First, those tries was they took advantage of the fact that Scotland had a player down injured, so effectively playing 15 against 14, and eventually the Scottish defence just ran out of numbers, and Cody Taylor got over wide in the corner, which I think that was the conversion that Bowden Barrett missed. Next up, again, the All Blacks were were challenging the New Zealand line, had a scrum again, I think it was. Another penalty advantage. Sonny Williams chipped it through just like he did the other week against France, except this time it was Damien McKenzie on the end of it, not Ryan Crotty, and we had a try from there. Damien McKenzie had generally a fairly quiet game overall, and so yeah, say that was one of his few standout moments of the game. Looking at then Gray, Scotland did get back into it. I thought they were going to be out of it there, but they got back into it. Gray powering over. Personally, I thought it might have been a double movement. And having watched the Rugby League earlier today, they would definitely have called it a double movement. But he got away with it and managed to reach over for the try. Barrett then scored and then New Zealand had Sam Cane yellow carded. A bit harsh, really. Well, not a bit harsh, but a bit unlucky that it was him. He'd managed to roll away from the ball, but his own players pushed him back over the ball. So it's a bit of a team yellow card. I know Sam Cane has picked up a few yellow cards recently. This one wasn't really his fault, and therefore, and even though that New Zealand were down a player in the scrum, their scrum was still the stronger of the 2 scrums. So they managed to have a scrum, get the ball out, spread it wide. Certainly with Williams, a good break, great line being run by Dave McKenzie, who took the offload, passed it out to Bowden Barrett, and Bowden Barrett had plenty of pace to go around, even though he had Naholo outside him as well. And that really gave them a big lead, a 12-point lead, and it looked like it was all over. But Scotland, to their credit, did come back, and just as time was running out, Hogg put a grubber through that Hugh Jones, I think was, put down. A wonderful kick by Russell made it a 5-point game, and then unfortunately Scotland just ran out of time in the end. So yes, a very close game. Scotland got back within 5. They had the ball. They were on the attack. Hogg just ran out of space, and the offload he threw went forwards, and that was the end of the game. But Scotland were definitely giving it a go. And so it was good to see. I think Scotland's problems, 15 turnovers conceded compared to New Zealand's 9. Was part of it, and that 69% tackling percentage is very low. And I've seen a few comments. I mean, New Zealand did pick up 2 yellow cards, but they were slowing the ball down a lot, and as is typical, they didn't really give up penalties in the opposition half because they don't want to give up the territory. But once it's within their 22, they're happy to give up penalties and give up 3 points rather than the try. And hence you can see that Scotland conceded 12 penalties, but New Zealand conceded 16 penalties. Which is a pretty high number, but it comes with the fact that they had only 21% of the territory in that second half and were under the cosh a lot. And that's they are a team that is willing to give up 3 points. And if the referee doesn't stop that with yellow cards, then that's how it's going to be. Looking at some of the stats around some of the players, Rieko Ioane, someone I joked about earlier, that he'd only scored 8 tries in 9 games. Didn't pick up a try this game, but boy, did he have a good game. He topped the meters. He didn't top the meters. He came second on the meters made mark behind Stuart Hogg. He was ahead for quite a lot of the time with 87 meters. But the big thing is he had 8 defenders beaten, and a lot of those were through power. Hogg also, who was named man of the match, had a really good game, 131 meters running, and 5 defenders beaten there. One of the things I noticed during the game, especially earlier, it wasn't really only at the end there that we saw some of the other backs passing the ball. And Price, obviously, as the Scottish Scrum-half, and Finn Russell made a lot of did a lot of passes, and we saw that Stuart Hogg got involved and made a few passes as well. But Jones, Dunbar, Hugh Jones, and Seymour at one point between them had only 2 passes in the whole between them. Towards the end there, Hugh Jones and Seymour had an extra couple in there, so they made 3 and 2 passes each. But Dunbar only made 1 pass all game, and Lee Jones only 1 pass as well. So it shows that it's again a game that's pretty much run off Price, Russell, and Hogg. But when Horn came on, he made a few passes. I say Scotland really were chasing the game by that stage. We're having to throw it around a bit more. For me, I think Ali Price was trying a bit too much, trying too hard, and and it led to him taking the wrong options quite often. To me, especially when Scotland were pressuring the New Zealand line, he picked and go and had tried to sneak in for a scrum half try when actually there was an overlap, and if they'd spread the ball quickly, they could have scored a try. I'm not sure that any of his snipes, Ali Price's snipes, actually paid off today. 6 runs it says for 3 meters. So clearly he didn't make any yards at all. And every single one of those runs, they didn't go anywhere. So really, his decision making around that side of things, I think he got kind of wrong. On the neither of the scrum, Smith on the other side also five snipes of 15 runs. But when you see the All Blacks doing it, someone else steps in who can pass it. Every time that Price seemed to do it, there was a forward would step in, and the only option was pick and go. And so you knew that if Price had made that little snipe, it wasn't going wide, and the wider players had time to rearrange themselves, and those overlaps just disappeared, evaporated because the players rearranged and were in place. On the, let's say, Hogg, Ioane, particularly were the two best. Barrett with that try, obviously, but apart from that, was pretty quiet. Quite a lot of kicking from Barrett, 19 kicks today, which is, I mean, we all know that New Zealand kick a lot, but Aaron Smith does quite a bit, but he only had made 7 kicks today. A lot of it that was left to Bowden Barrett today with the tactical kicking. And Sonny Williams, I think, had a good all-round game. We saw him, he was the person who passed it to Cody Taylor for the first try. He missed pass, a nice pick, so shows he can pass, not just offload. He also put that, made 1 kick with that chip through, or that grubber through for Mackenzie to score. I think Sonny Williams had a pretty good all-round game today. Whereas I kind of say it's perhaps I'm not saying he's any better than Crotty or whatever, but he'll get off. I'll be able to say how badly he's played. Just to make the point, he actually had a pretty good game today. On the tackling side of things, there was lots of talk of New Zealand targeting Finn Russell's channel, and he got a lot of help. Which meant they didn't seem too many breaks. But he made 1 tackle, he missed 5 tackles, and Ali Price, who was obviously with him helping with a lot of that stuff, made 1 tackle, missed 3 tackles. So a lot of missed tackles down that 9-10 channel for Scotland. Now I'm not sure that New Zealand made that much out of it, but hey, there was a lot down there. On New Zealand's side, no, the person who missed the most tackles was Kieran Reid with 3, but he did make 13. And it was definitely a big shift play by a lot of players. Crotty was the top tackler with 16. Sonny Williams, his centre partner, got another 11 as well. Amongst the forwards, Cody Taylor not only picks up the try, but got 10 tackles. His prop, Lualala, got 9. Luke Romano and Sam Wyclot, the 2 locks, 10 and 11 respectively. And then across the back row, Fafita 15, Sam Kane 12, Kieran Reid 13. So big shifts out of those players. And then Luke Squire also had a big break at the end there. He also picked up another 7 tackles as well when he came on the pitch. So big shifts made by those players. And most of them will have missed 1 or 2 tackles at most, but we should sort of call out Sam Cane, 12 tackles non-missed. Sam Whiteclock, 11 tackles non-missed. So some really good numbers there. On the turnovers conceded side of things, so we talked about the fact that Scotland made a lot of turnovers. Seymour was top of the list with 4, and Ali Price had 3 himself as well. So a lot of turnovers from those players. Anyway, very good game. As I thought, the All Blacks perhaps not at well, weren't allowed to play at their best by some good line speed from Scotland. But as the game opened up a little bit in the second half, took their advantages well, especially when realised when Scotland had that player down, and then after that Scotland were chasing the game a bit. Scotland, good game, but lacked a bit of clinical edge, especially in the first half, and that's where they need to step it up, I think, going forwards. Still a very good game. And I think that's the one that's going to push the All Blacks the furthest this year. Wales obviously come up next for them, and I think they'll find that's an easier game than this one. I think Scotland are definitely a team building and a team on the up. Obviously, one of Scotland's weaknesses was around that scrum, but I think they had 5 caps amongst their front row at one point, which just shows how injuries and how inexperienced that one is. I know New Zealand also are missing their entire first choice front row, so it was hardly a first, and also if they were Brody Retallick as well. So New Zealand, that pack wasn't the first choice pack either. They were missing half of their first choice pack. So a lot of players missing, but you always have injuries, and you have to cope with those. Anyway, always look for good rugby chats. Please put your comments below. If you're listening on the podcast, please do remember to share this with your friends and also subscribe. If you want to get hold of me, I'm always at DrivingMaul on Twitter, and say always up for good old rugby chat. Thanks for joining me, and catch you all next time.